This
There you go.
meeting is being recorded.
So, Sean, tell us what you were looking at Ricardo's video.
Yeah, so I was, we've been looking into Satan's Little Season thing, and Ricardo was actually my favorite one of the group of the guys there and girls that are talking about it. He's actually my favorite one. But what I've come to realize after listening to him and a lot of the other ones is all of them make a critical mistake. And okay, and I guess I should preface this to say this is my opinion. That's always wise to do. But so in my opinion, I think they all make, or at least the ones I'm familiar with, make a critical mistake. And what that mistake is that they don't understand what spiritual means.
Hmm.
And I'll tell you why. Because today Ricardo said, and I hate to pick on Brother Ricardo, but he did say this, so I'm going to comment on it. He said that in order for the kingdom, the millennial reign of Yeshua, to be literal and physical, it couldn't be spiritual. He said a spiritual kingdom would be
No.
like you couldn't see it and like a ghost and like the wind and stuff, but a physical kingdom, it had to be there. And I said, well, so I thought about that and I thought, brother, you're erring in scripture. He's erring and it's kind of a big deal in my opinion, and this is why how he's erring. Because if you want to know what spiritual means, then all you have to do is read the Gospels. Yeshua tells us what spiritual means because when he's resurrected from the dead, he's in his spiritual body.
He shows us. He
He
just
shows
doesn't
us.
tell us. He shows us.
He shows us. He is in his physical, eternal body. And what we know about that for sure is that he could be hugged, he could be touched, he could have his fingers put into his palms and into his side. He ate. He appeared, but we also know he walked through walls and he just appeared out of nowhere, and disappeared. So heavenly spiritual doesn't mean ghostly. It means of the essence of heaven.
Right.
Because if you think about it, the watchers, when they fell, like Enoch or like, uh, help me out, what's
No.
his name? In the New Testament, the smallest book at the end,
Oh, Jude.
Jude.
Yes.
Um, when they sinned, their sin was because they went after flesh of a different kind.
Right.
They they were of the essence of the Father of heaven, the heavenly essence, and they went in and tried to merge with human beings, physical human beings. And the problem with that, we know all if for especially if you've studied Torah like I know you have, you know how very strict Yahuwah is about mixing things.
Hmm.
He does not, you can't mix fabrics and you can't mix this and that. The reason why is because in creation he declared that things would reproduce after their own kind, it says.
Right.
So that's why it was such a grievous sin, for them to do that. So that's where they err. They say spiritual means ghostly or ethereal, and physical is physical, this, but they fail to remember it's actually opposite. Because if you know physics, then you know that this Bible I'm holding, it's more correct for me to say this Bible is not here than it is for me to say it is here because every single atom is made up of very, very small amount of actual matter. But as the electrons go around the nucleus, that space between them is counted in the dimensions of the atom. So it's correct to say an atom is more not there than it's there because there's more empty space by far than there is space occupied by the individual particles. So heaven is the opposite of that. It's the fullness of it. This is the digital finite simulation we have. Heaven is the fullness of that reality. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So spiritual is actually, if you think about it, spiritual is actually more physical than we are here. You know what I mean? And that's where they err. And so and they do that for a reason. They do it because they're trying to push the point that the camp of the saints and the heavenly Jerusalem is going to descend to the North Pole or is right now at the North Pole. And they say it has to be there because it has to be physical. And I argue, no, it doesn't have to be physical because spiritual is the ultimate in physicality. You know what
Like
I
you,
mean?
yeah, like you said, Jesus walked through walls, and yet he had a spiritual, physical body. So he
Yep.
could just. I remember a pastor a long, long time ago was talking. He was a great uh vision. He could give you visuals with his words so well, and he was a great teacher. And he would talk about how he was teaching us one time in like one of these Bible studies. And he says, he goes, yeah, imagine how cool it was when Jesus could just take his atoms and split them apart and then just walk through a wall and then reconstruct those atoms again on
Hmm.
the other side. And I'm like, yeah. And when I started getting into this Tartaria and these ancient civilizations that appeared or disappeared, and it was filled with people and it wasn't. I'm like, of course, Jesus showed us when he sat on the shore and said, hey, dudes, I got some fish here. I'm broiling some fish. Have some fish with me, or when he went to Thomas and said, put your fingers through the holes in my hand, and then he disappeared. So to me, that clicked. That was a click when I started thinking about that, and I said, yeah, that can happen. A
Yeah,
whole civilization can show up and then disappear. You know, and
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, it sure can.
yeah, I'm so fascinated with Tartarian that it's on the map, then it's off the map, and it's funny today. I think I sent it today or yesterday, I'm not sure, but I'm on LinkedIn. I do LinkedIn for business all day long, and there's a couple of folks on there that are in our camp. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah.
And one guy, and I don't think you were able to see it, but he posted something, and it was Tartaria, map of Tartaria, and he goes, isn't it funny how Tartaria disappeared? And all of a sudden, the central bank started growing through. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I froze on my own screen here.
No, you're
But
good.
he goes, isn't it funny how Tartaria disappeared off all the maps and all its records? And all of a sudden, the central banking system evolved in the 1700s in multiple different areas. And I'm like, interesting. And yeah, and I think I was talking to you about let me just take my Bible here. This is where I started reading I think it was Revelations 20. And I think I posted in our little group there. It was really interesting how I read through that. I read all the way to 20, and I'm like, wait a minute, it looks like there's two different things going on. Like yeah, I don't think I highlighted it. I think it was Revelations 19, where it's the part where the Son of God goes to war. Then I saw heaven opened up, and here came a white horse. This is 11, verse 11. The one riding it was called Faithful and True, and with justice he judges and goes to war. His eyes are like fiery flame, and there are many diadem crowns on his head. He has a name written that no one knows except himself. He is dressed in clothing dipped in blood, and he's called the Word of God. The armies that are in heaven, dressed in white, clean, fine linen, will follow him in white horses. From his mouth he extends a sharp sword, so that with it he can strike the nations. He will rule them with an iron rod, and he stomps the winepress of the furious wrath of God, the all-powerful. And his name is written on his clothing and on his thigh, King of Kings, Lord of Lords. Then I saw one angel standing in the sun and shouted in a loud voice to all birds flying high in the sky, come gather around the great banquet of God, to eat your fill of the flesh of kings, and the flesh of generals, and the flesh of powerful people, and the flesh of horses and those who ride them, and the flesh of all people, both free and slave, and small and great. So I read that, I'm like, that's 80, 70 as far as I'm concerned, because that sounds like the exact description that Flavius described when he saw
Mhm.
all of that happening in the sky.
Yep.
And their armies are assembled to do battle with the one who rode the horse and with his army. Now the beast was seized, and along with him the false prophet who had performed the signs on his behalf, signs with which he deceived those who had received the mark of the beast and those who worshipped his image, both of them were thrown alive in the lake of fire, burning. And it goes, the others were killed by the sword. And it goes on and on. And like, to me, from what I understand, he's describing what happened in AD 7, the destruction of Jerusalem.
Yep, I agree.
And then the other one is then I go to Revelations 20. It says Satan's final defeat. And it talks about the 1,000-year and I think it goes in place here, but it goes 19 and then 20 talks about the 1,000-year millennial reign right after all of that's done. And then at the end of it, it says, now when the
the first 6 verses do talk about the millennial reign.
Okay, yeah, right. I over exaggerated, yeah. But from 7 to from Revelation 20, from 7 to verse 7 to 10, it talks about now when the 1,000 years are finished, Satan will be released from his prison and will go out to deceive the nations at the four corners of the earth. And that's like I have no problem believing that's going on right now. And then it says, let's see, all four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to bring them together for a battle. They are numerous as the grains of sand in the sea. They went up on the broad plain of the earth and encircled the camp of the saints and the beloved city. But fire came down from heaven and devoured them completely. And it says that the beloved city, doesn't say Israel, doesn't say Jerusalem, because I don't think he didn't give it a name. So to me, Israel is gone. It's a beloved city still because people still love it. They think what they think. But I think Israel's gone as far as a biblical perspective goes, because it's now a heavenly city, right?
Right.
I'm not saying this like I know everything. I'm just saying what my perspective on this is, and
right.
I'm open to correction. So that city gets devoured, and it says, then the devil who deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet are, not will be. They are there already. That are is like a present tense.
Mm-hmm.
R2. So they were from the first round. You know what I'm saying?
That's
AD 70, that's for their first round. And they will be tormented day and night, forever and ever. And then it talks about the great white throne judgment.
That's right. And verse 11 starts out with a specific word, then.
Yeah,
So
right.
after that, then he sees a great white throne. And people should write in their margins of their Bibles, in my opinion, right here, starting in verse 11 down to 15, 1 Corinthians 15.
First Corinthians 15?
1 Corinthians 15, 24, and 25, in my opinion.
Let me check that out. So what's cool is I feel like in my own head that the timelines are all for years I always wondered what those two different situations. Now it just makes so much sense.
Yep.
Can you read 24 and 25?
Yep. Then comes the end, when he hands over the kingdom to God and the Father, when he has abolished all rule and authority and power, because he must reign until he has put all enemies under his feet. The last enemy to be abolished is death. So that tells us that Yeshua's reign is going to end when his last enemy has been subjected to him, And Paul says the last enemy is death. Well, we
Mm.
know from our scriptures exactly the moment that's going to happen. It's going to happen in Revelation chapter 20, verse 14. Then death and Hades were thrown
Ah,
into the lake of fire. This is
awesome.
the second death. Because then after that, the very first verse of the next chapter begins with the word then. Again, after that, I saw a new heaven and a new earth, not renewed, new, because the first heaven and the first earth passed away, and there is no longer any sea. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, made ready as a bride adorned for her husband. So they're wrong when they say that the heavenly Jerusalem is going to descend at the end of Satan's little season, and they're going to surround, that's the beloved city they're going to surround,
No, it's
because that's not
indestructible.
possible. Yeah,
No,
that's not possible. It doesn't come down until there's a new heaven and a new earth after sin, death, and the devil have been destroyed in the lake of fire. So they're wrong about that.
yeah, I agree with you 100% because it says back in 19, I think it's not back in chapter 19 where it says the beloved city, not Jerusalem, but because I believe the Lord still loves that land. He just it's just he's done with it though. You know what I'm saying? He took care of business there back in AD 7. So I truly believe that's the beloved city that they're gonna blow up. I agree with you, man. So the new heaven and new earth. Yeah, and I think and hopefully I make myself understandable here. The stuff that we built, the forests, the trees, the animals, everything that's on this earth right now, the seas and all of that. I think the actual dirt, whatever you want to call it, that's underneath all of that, will still be here. He's just gonna like take a blowtorch, a cosmic blowtorch, and just blow everything, burn everything up, and he's gonna be left with this rock, this, and then he's gonna have the New Jerusalem just cover this whole rock.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way sometimes I gotta think of things in physical terms. I don't
Yeah.
know if that's a right depiction, but I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe just going to remodel everything. Just burn it up.
Well, we
And
were talking about that today, earlier in the room,
yeah,
and I was talking about the temple and the tabernacle, and I said, uh, because I was talking about the end from the beginning. We are talking about Revelation 21, 22, and I showed how that was just the Garden of Eden. And I said, we're trying to go back to the beginning because remember, everything is about that. And I said, if you think about it, Yahuwah made the earth, and there was a land he called Eden. And he said, within the land of Eden, he planted a garden. So you have a garden inside the land of Eden, inside the rest of the earth.
right.
So you have in the temple, in the tabernacle, you have the most holy place, the Garden of Eden. You have the holy place, the land of Eden, and you
Mm,
have the outer courts,
mm,
the rest of the world. So that's what it's
yes,
all about. It's all about that. And then when Yeshua, that was the first covenant. That was Hagar. Genesis 1:1, creation is Hagar. People need to remember that. It is
right.
Hagar. It is only the two-dimensional, fleshly, limited reality that is just a reflection of the reality that is heaven, which is infinitely more real than this place is. This is just a
Yes.
reflection. This is a digital simulation, like Chuck Missler showed. This is physics, math tells us this is a digital simulation.
Just like
If
the
you're a
Matrix.
believer,
The
it's like the
Matrix.
Matrix, yeah. So if you're a believer in God in heaven, you have no problem with that whatsoever, man.
Not at all.
The most basic Christian knows what are you going to happen when I'm going to go to heaven when I die, they say. Yeah, they may understand it at the most basic childlike rudimentary level, but I'll be darned if that's not true. That's what Yeshua said. I'm going to my father's house to make a place, then I
Right.
come get you and bring you back to where I am so you can be with me. Not here, at the place where he went. So
Like he says in if thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That I believe that the millennial reign was that.
Yeah.
His kingdom did come to earth, and it was a spiritual kingdom. And like me and you know, spiritual doesn't mean invisible. It
Hmm.
just means a different form, a different behavior,
That's
if you
right.
will.
Yeah, absolutely it does. Then when Yeshua, so that was all of that true from Genesis 1:1 all the way up until the crucifixion, all of that was true. But then when Yeshua was crucified, what's the thing that we're told in the Gospels absolutely happened and is so significant? The temple veil ripped in two, it said. The
Right,
temple veil was the thing that separated us from God the Father, was the
right.
veil. That was ripped in half because his flesh, we are told by Paul, Yeshua's flesh was the veil. The veil was the Hagar type and shadow. The veil in that temple was the Hagar type and shadow of Yeshua's torn flesh on that cross. That's the reality of it because everything from the old points to the new. So there you go.
Yes,
And so once you understand that and you step out of Hagar and out of the flesh and into the spirit, which is actually more real than the flesh is, then you have the fullness. That's simple. You can't have both. You cannot be lukewarm. Yeshua says he rather someone be cold or hot. He does not want them to be lukewarm.
he
Why?
hates mixing. He doesn't like
That's
mixing.
why. You're right. That's exactly why. Because cold is an absolute, hot is an absolute, warm is a mixture. And God hates mixture.
Mixture.
That's right. Amen, brother. You're right.
Yeah, no, I see it, bro. I mean, the more I study this stuff, and I am like I said, I'm completely fascinated with Tartaria because I believe it,
So do
and
I.
and Jesus showed us. He
Hmm.
showed us, man. There's no arguing there about it. And I remember when I was at first when I started reading about Tartaria, I'm like, this is BS, man. This is garbage. What are these guys do? And then boom, I had a visual of Jesus sitting on the beach. I had a visual of him Thomas putting his fingers through his hands. I'm like, wow, that's right. He could appear and disappear. He could create a building and take the building away in a blink of an eye. I just it all made sense.
Hmm. And Philip had first fruits of that kingdom. Remember, he was in Acts 8, he was chatting with the Ethiopian eunuch,
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden he appears far north and way up by Samaria, pass in way into Samaria. And it's
yeah,
like, and that's because they had a first fruit of the kingdom. Then had all these spiritual gifts as signs and to propagate the gospel,
yeah. Amen. And
so.
he and also another thing that fascinates me is when there's a story when Jesus was in a crowd and they were coming to get him. They wanted to kill him, and he basically disappeared. And there was I forget this is my translation in my head, but they were in a crowd. He's with a couple of disciples, and boom, they turned around. He's gone, and then he's up on a hill with a bunch of other disciples, and one of the disciples turned around and said, "Whoa, where did you come from?"
Mhm.
So he had the command of that, especially when he was with Moses and Elijah, and he glowed. He basically looked like whitewashed, bleached outfit. Was glowing.
Mhm.
I mean, that's all kingdom stuff, man.
Yeah. Well, that's like when they took him to the edge of the cliff. They drug him outside of town. They were
Right?
going to throw him over the cliff, and it just says he just walked through him because it wasn't his time. So he's like, what does that mean? How exactly did that happen? We don't know, but it happened. He just said, no, it's not my time. That's not how I go out, and just
Yep.
walked right through him. Off we go, see you later.
See you later. Yep. Wow, it just blows me away, man.
Yeah.
All of this make it like I said, it's the same. I experienced just the last couple of weeks. I'm experiencing the same thing I did when I realized the Hebrew roots way is definitely in major error. When that one scripture, like the scripture, all the Torah is summed up in one word: love your neighbor as yourself. And that just kind of flew off the page and started a roller coaster for me. The same thing happened when I started looking into how Jesus just manifested wherever he wanted to when he was in his resurrected form. And then I'm saying, wait a minute, that goes along well with all these cities. And that was another thing I wanted to talk about with the Tartaria. What is it with how Who was behind making all these records not, disappear? Like, when they would take the census and stuff and see who, they said the churches, I think it was Andy and some other video I was watching said the churches were meticulous in keeping the name, the census of people, who names, they had vaults of name after name after name and genealogies and whatnot. And all of a sudden, all of those disappeared. It just blows me away. And
I think they're
but
in the vaults of the Vatican. That's what I think.
ah,
They said they had 50 miles of vaults. They said that, not it's not conspiracy. They actually said that, and they said we have writings from we got hagiography writings in there from people that said they were resurrected saints, and they have all this thousands and tens of thousands of documents. They said that cover that 1,000 years, but and they even said that most of them have never been translated. They don't even know what they say. Never been translated. All of them. So they openly admit to it, and they've actually been releasing a lot of them now. And if you've ever looked at any of them, they're amazing. They talk about just really a resurrected saint. I mean, doing the same stuff they were doing in the Book of Acts, basically.
so I mean, basically, the people that were believers back in AD 70 that got whacked, come that are showed up again in
Yep.
resurrected bodies.
Yep. And the ones that were alive and survived the Great Tribulation until his coming were changed. Yep, those people.
My wife said the same thing. She was right. She said, I was telling her a little bit about, I got to go easy with this stuff because she's still kind of got one foot in the Left Behind series and stuff. And
Hey, I get it, man.
so she's, I don't want to, I do it a little bit at a time with her. And, but she's catching on to this Tartary. She goes, I bet the Vatican has all of those records.
They do. And they admit it too. They're not trying to hide it. They did hide it for years and years, but the jig is up and they know it, so they just figured we
You got to
better admit it.
I would love to. So you're saying it's probably written in a very old Latin type language. I wouldn't be surprised.
They
Yeah.
said there's Greek, Latin, even some Hebrew. Actually, all these there's many universities in their archives. There's regular universities have thousands of these hagiography writings in their actual digital library. You can
Uh,
go up for free and look at them,
I
read
wonder
them.
how. Yeah, I wonder how you get in it. You've never been in Manhattan, right?
One time I've been in Manhattan.
Well, they have
I
the New York
touched the Empire State Building.
Pub.
That's my claim
Yeah.
to fame.
Well, that's probably that's left over too. I believe. I
I do
believe that's.
too.
Um, and I had an office in there. I had a business partner that we rented an office in there. It was awesome going to that every day, man. Um, the ceilings are like 500, like 50 feet high, and the whole building inside is all of those crazy shapes. You know
Hmm.
what I'm saying? All those
Yeah.
gargoyle type shapes and whatnot. And it was great going there. And the walls were like incredibly you could tell it was like layers of, refurbishing wall after wall. But
Hmm.
yeah, so I mean, I had as I started get into this, I started thinking about that building. I'm saying I have no problem believing that's been around for thousands of years. And all they did was either dig it up or refurbish it. They didn't. No one built that in the last 100 years. How could they? Some of those walls, the only way you could get them to line up together is with like a laser light and some highly advanced equipment. And they didn't have any of that back. Look, they had hammers 100 years ago to be able to build that stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's like I was talking to Amy the other night, and I was talking to the guys this morning. I said, well, just think about this for a minute. Look at the cathedrals and
Yes.
look how magnificent they are. And it wasn't just the cathedrals, it was all the other buildings that are now gone were like little mini versions of those cathedrals. They were all intricate like that. And then think about it, a couple hundred years later, go to look at the American West. Look at our cities in America from a couple hundred years later.
Yeah.
They're all just wooden squares. Even the big nice hotels, they're ultimately just wooden squares.
Yeah.
Compared to those cathedrals,
Yeah.
They're huts. And so I asked the group, I said, okay, let me ask you a question. If you were to take a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old and sit them in front of a picture of those two buildings, the biggest, most grand wooden one from the frontier days and one of these cathedrals, and say, which one of these you think was built first and which one do you think was built like recently? All
Right.
of them would say the wooden hut was built first and the cathedral was built recently, and it's just the opposite.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Exactly.
how could that be when it's a worldwide phenomenon? You know, every
Yes.
country in the world have these things. They all match. How could that be? It's not logical. So we're not
I was
stupid.
no, exactly. And I mean, and that's another thing. I was like, how did they build? I've always thought, how did they build this building, 100 years ago? And then I would just kind of forget about it. But now it's like I'm diving in. I was like I was saying, the New York Public Library, right on Fifth Avenue and between Fifth and Sixth Avenue, and I forget, is it 39th and 40th Street, right smack dab in the middle of Manhattan. It's like the hugest library that's out there. Remember Ghostbusters? I'm
Oh
sure you
yeah.
saw Go.
Yeah, yeah.
They filmed it in there. It
Oh
is like
wow.
that. It's huge. It's tremendous. And I'm like, I was telling my wife, I says, I wonder if they got a what did you call it? Holography?
Yeah.
I wonder if they
Hagiography.
holography uh section there where I can, either go on see it digitally, or I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna make that a goal. Go to get to Manhattan. Go to that library and investigate whether it's got, because it's right in Manhattan, and I want to get something on all the old buildings. And you're right though. Some of these high scale universities have, they've been around a couple of 100 years. I'm sure Harvard and all these other uh, high end colleges have libraries that have archives in it that we could find, um, stuff about the Tartaria and whatnot.
For free too. It doesn't
Yeah,
cost you anything. They actually let you search through archives for free.
yeah, that's going to be. I'm gonna make that a goal of mine to get Manhattan and talk to some of the librarians there. Librarians, they love helping people, man.
Hmm. Yeah.
But that's interesting, man. Yeah, and then I was also watching. They were talking about these orphaned kids. Do you remember that? In
The orphan trains.
yeah, 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 and they're like, these kids had no parents, thousands of them, and they were like, where? I would love to meet one of these kids. So where's your mom and dad? I don't know. I was just here. I just put you. And then they said they would the populations would grow, and they were able to, be pre 1500s. They would keep track of it, and they would see the population would grow, grow, grow. Then all of a sudden, they hit a certain point where it would go from like a nice little slow curve to a straight up. And they say the populations would explode, and they couldn't figure out why. Especially with the kids. The kids had no parents. What's up with that?
Yeah, that was the orphan train movement. If you research that, what you see is that it coincides with the institutions or the rise of the institutions and the insane asylums worldwide. They did it worldwide. What ended up happening is it's really tragic, man, is that and it wasn't just thousands of orphans kids, it was hundreds of thousands of orphan kids during the orphan
Well,
train movement. It was crazy. But
what's it called? Orphan train, you said?
yeah, the orphan trains. Yeah.
Hmm. And
But
they just
so
they don't know where they came from.
well,
These orphan.
we think we know where they came from now because they coincide with the saying this these there was a worldwide push in the late 1700s worldwide to build insane asylums,
Hmm.
and they were housing uh, people that were had like mental retardation, physical disabilities, people with like mental health, and all those other issues were there. But the biggest group of people that we know now were put in there were what they labeled as religious fanatics.
Oh,
And they were allowed to, if you research it, there's a long list of people that were allowed to had the authority to hospitalize somebody in the institution. And the main reason most people were institutionalized, we know now, was because of religious fanaticism
They were
and
speaking the truth.
speaking the truth. And so what do? They imprison these moms and dads. And let me tell you, if you research it, be prayed up because you start reading stories about what was happening in these institutions, and it's horrific, as you
It's
can
probably like the
probably
not.
imagine.
It's probably like the Nazi prison camps.
Yeah,
All the
experimental
experimental. Yeah,
medical things and rape and sodomy and just the worst
the
kind of
worst you
things you
could
can
think.
think
Yeah.
of. But
Where did you
that
read about
left,
this, or where did you
oh,
watch
it's
this?
all over. Yeah, it's all over. I can send you links, but just Google it. It's all over. YouTube, it's all over YouTube.
Orphan trains. Just
The orphan train movement, type in and you'll see it. The orphan train movement. But it coincides with that. So if you have hundreds of thousands of men and women being thrown away into these asylums, these children are instantly parentless, and they gather all these children up and they ship them to the East Coast where they're dispersed around the rest of the land. And they say, because if you look at the posters, they say, oh, it's because good Christian families need help on their ranches and stuff to work. So they were shipping these kids out west to do this. What they were actually doing with them is getting child labor, free child labor. They were
yeah.
working in the coal mines, they were working in these large industries for nothing, for room and board with their new mama and papa, because they didn't know they were whitewashed from where they actually came from. And that was their life,
Erased. They were just
erased.
erased.
They were slave labor basically that worked for nothing, and they were expendable because there was hundreds of thousands of them, and a fresh supply were rolling in every however long, week, 2 weeks, whatever it was. It's sad, it's
Wow.
sickening.
How
That's
s
America, man. That's America, dude. You know, land of the free, home of the brave. We're a Christian nation. What a biggest crack of horse crap I ever heard, man. We know the Puritans, yeah, in the very, very beginning
yeah, in the
started that out.
in the
That
15
was
and
stomped out quick,
1600s,
though. Yeah, yeah, exactly. That was stomped out quickly, though.
before Satan was released for
That's
this
right.
for a season. So, because I
That's
know
right.
my house, my property, my land, I researched the deed, when this was initially deeded,
Yeah.
and it's a 1642. My
Wow.
yeah, and the house is not that old, obviously, but
Yeah.
it's the land has been entered into records in 1640. I even got the names of the people because I was doing one of these things. I was looking to do uh chain of deeds where you can go all the way back to when the house was first deeded and
Hmm.
how it says that it was before the tax laws, the property taxes. And if you put the right documentation together and file it, you don't have to pay any property
Hmm.
taxes. So I was looking into doing that, and I'm like, you know what? This is the freaking beast system. It's here. I don't want to go on a crusade to fight the beast system by myself. Maybe there's people that have, but there's too many other ways to circumvent the system legally. You know.
Yeah. I just
So,
look at it all as rendering unto Caesar what is Caesar's. I'm not
yeah.
a part of this world. I'm just passing through. They can have my wealth, they can have my material. They can't have my soul that belongs to him. And so whatever, you know?
Yeah, good. Well, nice attitude, man. What do you call it? Well, look at Paul, man. Paul used his citizenship to not get killed. You know,
That's
he,
right.
he- So I mean, we could do the same thing in different ways. Basically to help spread the gospel.
You know, and people like to say stuff about Paul because of that. Oh, he just uses like Jackson used to say, he just uses Roman citizenship. It's like, okay, hypocrite. Wouldn't you use your American citizenship if it got you out of getting killed? Or
Yeah,
or or no, are you too proud? You don't want to play that card? Please,
yeah,
please. We all of us would do it. I'm an American, don't kill me. Of
yeah.
course we
Exactly.
would.
Of course. Why
Come
not? To
on,
live
man.
another day and speak to. In Paul's case, he wanted to live another day to speak the gospel to to the lost and whatnot. But yeah,
Yeah,
let's not get.
Yeshua knows what he's doing. When he saved and commissioned Paul, he knew what he was doing because he
Yeah,
needs to go to the Gentiles and he needs a Roman to do that.
yeah,
So why not a
exactly.
Roman that is actually a Torah expert? There you go.
Yeah,
Two
exactly.
birds with one stone.
Exactly. Exactly. But yeah. But
Well, what do you
uh,
think, brother? You about ready to wrap this up? I got to get off here anyway.
yeah, yeah. Go listen. Go finish packing, and this is great, bro. I'm gonna send you. I'll send you a. I might. I don't know. I have my own channel, but it's not. Mine's more geared towards sales, so I might not put it up on there. But I'll send you the Fathom link. All right.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, because I'd love to put it on mine too.
All right,
I
brother.
we
Listen.
we we should do these more often if we can, because I really enjoy these chats we have, you and I.
Oh, me too, bro. I learned so much, and it just kind of solidifies stuff that I've been thinking about, and it just makes me realize I'm not crazy, man. You know, there's somebody else out there who's right in alignment, man. But and that's always good. But
Yeah.
listen, brother, have a blessed vacation or a blessed evening. Send my love to the family. Tell Salas he's got Uncle Paulie praying for him every day, man. And my prayers will not return void, man.
All right, brother. I will tell him, and you do the same for you. And you are willing. We'll see you soon.
God bless, brother.
You too.